Oh, I see us. Oh, there you go. All right.
There we go.
Oh, beautiful.
I hear us. Testing 1, 2. So can you hear over there?
I'm hearing something.
Over here.
That's me.
Testing audio
So
display.
you're hearing me. And so I may be the audio monitor over here.
Well, I was wondering, like, is there a sound? Like, because I know these speakers right here.
Yeah, there's audio.
Okay. Is that it? Test, test, test. I was wondering, like, is there a sound?
That's not here.
Okay, but are we trying to get the
That's
sound?
out. So yeah, I'm trying to get that sound because I don't want to hear. You want to hear that there, so she can.
Exactly. So my HDMI.
So you're telling you audio in the box? See in the black?
Yeah, I saw a knob and it was in the negative, so I turned it up. Let's see. So my HDMI.
So you're telling you audio in the box?
Negative 1 dB. Test, test.
There's an AV person who might be able to help us.
Yeah.
That would be great.
All right, I'm gonna go ask
Thank you.
before I push anything.
All right. I'm trying to figure out a graphic or something I can put.
Graphics on the screen.
Well, because I got that chair. I'm trying to.
Is it just gonna be me in the chair, and then are we gonna pull back when it's like me and Kevin? Like, if you want me and Kevin.
Yeah, pull back into both of you guys.
Oh.
So that'll be a 1 shot and 2 shot. Can stop each other. So y'all be sitting there together talking now. I got a shot. Then I have.
Because we have a little bit of a touch panel on the back wall there
Oh,
that has some controls for this.
okay.
You may see, I don't want to get near your,
No, I understand.
but you may
Oh
just,
yeah, the touch panel is
Yeah.
on. I remember that last time.
yeah.
Okay.
So I think that may have a volume control.
I remember.
And
Okay.
if not, then Michael might.
Yeah, yeah.
He
These
should
guys.
be here shortly.
Okay.
What time did you guys?
We go live about a half an hour.
Okay, you'll be here before that.
Okay, thank you.
But yeah, I think. Oh, there you go. Is it doing anything? It doesn't look like it's.
Oh, look, HGTV. Maybe it's, oh no, look, rack input. Okay, so it is on the rack source.
Awesome. Oh, there you go. I saw it moving up.
Yeah, so maybe that might
All
have,
right.
maybe that might have done something.
If it didn't, let me know and I'll try to get Michael in here as soon as he gets here.
All right, perfect. Thank you. Test, test.
Welcome to Black History Month, celebration from Los Angeles Live. We're joined with Jeff Thompson and Dana Womack, entertainment. Celebration from Los Angeles Live. We're joined with Jeff Thompson.
Let's do it one more time because let me record. Easy. Let's take from the top again.
And Jeff, Dana, great to meet you. Thank you for joining us. And I'll let you tee off, Jeff. Please tell us a little bit about your work with Oracle and at USC, and really why media, entertainment, and technology are pertinent in these times.
Oh, that's great. Thank you, Terrence, and great to be with you, Dana. My name is Jeffrey Thompson, and I'm a vice president at Oracle Corporation and an adjunct professor at USC. You see, I brought some USC paraphernalia behind us, right? The other big piece that I think that I wanted to make sure you know about is, Oracle is a technology company. I spent 11 years as in the Walt Disney Company organization, including as vice president, global business development. What that means is any kind of media company considers itself a technology company because typically they want all of their content to be across new technology platforms such as mobile, such as 3D, such as the metaverse or any other technology. So I spend my time at the intersection of technology and content and new management and monetization systems. And the reason why that's relevant for today is because both the media, technology, and communications industries have been, in many cases, out of reach for many people of color, sometimes because of the challenge in technology of navigating those industries. And in the case of media, entertainment, and communications, the exact same. Navigating those industries is hard. It needs a particular skill set. And in addition, people need mentors and roadmaps. So I'll stop there and say thank you for having me.
Thank you, Jeff, for joining us. We're so honored to have you. Going into this, I just first want to talk about how your experience in being a leader at Disney, how that affected you when you transitioned into doing adjunct teaching at different universities, and then how that helped you moving into, your job now at Oracle Technology, how leadership and technology, how those go hand in hand, and how you need one to really be successful in the other.
Yeah, I think for any student, I would always caution them to set big goals. I would also advise them to go into areas where they could be curious. I think that when you look at the Walt Disney Company, there's a little bit of schizophrenia there, right? Most people feel like they know the Disney Company simply because they know the Disney brand, or they know the Disney theme parks, they know Disney movies. However, find that most people don't know that Disney was one of the first media companies to stream. That Disney was one of the first to own a patent on Blu-ray disc. That's a technology that I launched with Disney. And not just that Disney was a content owner, but they owned and had a very influential part of the content and the distribution system. So what I learned is continuous learning is super critical always. Getting into areas where the market is going is another area that is very important that we typically, don't typically think about. Many times we've been, not as involved or invited into particular areas. So by the time we get invited in, those areas have been sort of grown over. And so I always tell my students, and I tell people that I work with, that the fact is you want to be going where the puck is going, not where it's been. So you want to be looking at what are those new monetization systems, what is happening with mobile technology and content, what is happening with the metaverse, where you will see growth and a different way to monetize, meaning make money off of or build a business around. Different platforms that will be coming. It's almost if I told you, hey, right now in 2022, are you going to invest in an Apple iPhone or are you going to invest in a website? Well, first you need to do both, but you probably want to go with whichever one is going to grow the fastest and be the most influential around the world and in the United States. Dana, I'll turn it back to you.
Much. That was all very helpful. Going off of that, I would love to talk about YouTube and your work with YouTube and how that has just completely transcended, especially when it comes to children and the amount of watch time that children's video gets, especially things like Mr. Beast and all the different children's entertainment, and how that's kind of challenged what we knew about media and even television.
Yeah, I find it incredible the changes in it. And if you talk about specifically around, if you talk real holistically around TV, then I'll talk a little bit around YouTube. If you talk about television in general, most of us grew up with a television set. We grew up with a television, and it was like, hey, do you have a TV in your? How many TVs do you have in your house? One in the living room? Do you have one in your bedroom? But meaning, like, our whole ecosystem was around a television, right? How we communicated with our news, with our local news, our national news, with movies and TV shows. And there's about 300 million TV sets in the United States. On average, there's about 100 million homes, and there's about three TVs each home. So you have about 300 million TV sets. And so you were programming for a universe of 300 million people, or 300 million or 100 million households. Quite frankly, what YouTube has done and what they've done in terms of leveraging new types of devices is expand that significantly. So how many cell phones are out there in the United States alone? Almost 1 billion, around the world. Just you have a significant install base. So you went from having 100 million different households to everyone having a TV in their pocket. And that is what is changing the business of entertainment, because now I am programming to each one of you, each person, rather than I'm programming for a glob of women or a glob of students or a glob of men that love sports. Now I'm programming to Jeffrey Thompson. And what does Jeffrey Thompson like? So the whole ecosystem around personalizing, democratizing matters. What YouTube has done by allowing for content that is not just professional content, but also user-generated content, it's allowed sort of the democratization of content. If you take a look at things like TikTok, if you take a look at things like Reel and other like really new content creation vehicles that are 30-second, a minute long, right? Stories that Snapchat started. It all started with YouTube starting that environment to get people used to like creating their own content and uploading it. The byproduct of that is that it's allowed for literally millions of people to put themselves on their own personal television. It's put themselves in their own areas to not just create content, but also to be seen and heard. And what that's done is it's gone back to the typical broadcasters that have had to expand exponentially. And I don't know if you've noticed, but in the last 10 years, there's been an avalanche of new types of content, diverse content that's shown all around the world. One of my favorite shows is on Netflix that was literally done in France with the lead character as an African-American guy. That would have never been possible or become mainstream 20 years ago, because we were programming to a small universe generally of folks. And now that democratization, meaning significant numbers of content and content offerings, is allowing new people to get into the market. And I'll give you one example. Since I left Disney, I produced 5 television shows. One on ABC Family, which was when I was at Disney, and then I've done 3 documentary sets, including Scrum, which just launched in October of this past year. Scrum tells the story of an African-American, the first African-American coach in the United States to win an NCAA national championship. Now, why is that important? Because I produced it and I own a piece of that content. And more than that, that's the kind of content that we wouldn't have been able to produce and get funded 20 years ago, because it's talking about rugby, not a big sport in the United States, but a big sport globally. It's talking about an African American lead character, and it's a documentary format. All of these things now are very valuable, and we can tell stories that resonate with folks. But it's all because of what YouTube started years ago, and not that many years ago. I'll turn it back over to you, Dana.
Jumping off of that, I really want to touch on what you said about TikTok and how TikTok has changed the way for even YouTube and Snapchat, how Snapchat and stories and just short form media has really changed even how we view long form media, how people have to react to, people losing the ability to pay attention after 60 seconds, scenes having to cut super quickly to match up with the fact that we're watching these TikToks that are 1 minute each and only up to 3 minutes, how that's just affected media in general.
Yeah, it's funny because, when I talk to students or when I'm talking to professionals in the media sector, I always talk about the importance of always following where people's eyeballs are going. No matter if you look at any good entertainment company or media communications company, they're always studying every aspect of what people are doing in their spare time. Are they watching the news? Are they watching a television show? Are they playing a video game? Are they doing TikToks? Are they creating their own videos? Or are they shopping online on Amazon? So knowing what people do with their habits and the trends that are taking place with people, that is super critical in determining not just what to invest in, but what people are doing and what they're interested in. And so when I look at TikTok is interesting because if you look at the last quarter of 2021, meaning the last year, the last quarter, but last year of 2021, TikTok was the number one growing technology vehicle for video, number one. And guess who's number two now at the time? Number two for growth is YouTube, meaning Google. Number one now is TikTok, not in full, but in growth. And we always want to look at what's growing, what's trending, because that tells you sort of where people's habits are. TikTok is a phenomenal property in that it spins off a lot of information, it spins off a lot of data, but it also showcases a quick and easy way to entertain, not just to watch others entertain you, but also for you to be involved in that game and entertain. The backside of TikTok is also very important, as it is with all the platforms, and that is that it tells advertisers and other people that want, and organizations that want to influence a consumer, it tells them exactly what you as a person are interested in. It tells you your behavior online and these kinds of things that add to business profiling and just in determining influence. And so TikTok is doing that in a big way. And if you look at what Meta, which is the new name for Facebook, they've started copying. They've released Reels, which is really fast growing for Facebook. They've released Reels to compete against TikTok. YouTube is doing a lot more short form video in order to compete against TikTok. So you always want to be finding out where are those eyeballs, where are they going, and where's that advantageous to you? I spent, just before I got on this call, I was on a call with some experts, and we were talking about the metaverse and the importance of, as that ecosystem develops, it's important for young people to know, okay, how do I use this? What do I use it for? How do I monetize it? Meaning, how do I create businesses around it? How do I engage and create content for it? And then, is this really going to be something, or is it a lot of hype? And so you never know. Sometimes these things blow up in big ways, and other times they fail. But when they blow up, they typically blow up big. Metaverse is all about creating virtual worlds and having real estate in those worlds, and products in those worlds, and sponsorships in those worlds, and entertainment and content in those worlds. And if you can imagine, if you look at TikTok, or if you look at any other entertainment company, they're interested in the behavior of the consumer. Well, you think Disney with Frozen, Disney with a Star Wars franchise, Disney with a Pixar franchise. You think they want to have a situation where people can go in to their little personal frozen world and enjoy all the fruits of that? And it's something that technology would not allow, but it is allowing for now. So I say that TikTok is representative of everything about knowing and becoming an expert always in what's next. What are the new technologies? How will they shape us? How will they change us? If you would have told me that everyone in America and everyone in the world would have a flashlight on their phone at all times, that they'd have a banking device, they'd have an encyclopedia in their pocket at one time, that everyone would have a television in their pocket all the time, 24/7, right? That it changes behavior. And boy, anybody that's a futurist says, wait, how do I leverage that? How do I take advantage of that? Making those conveniences and making, leveraging that and making it so people can, one, make a living and get new skill sets in that environment. But also, you always want to go where the wind's at your back, where the growth is. And when you say, if I were to tell you like now, would you go back and invest in iPhone? Would you go back and invest in Netflix if you knew that streaming was going to be the big thing for the next 15 years? Everyone says yes in hindsight. Well, start thinking ahead to what's next from that as they grow. What's the next evolution of growth? And TikTok represents that right now. And I asked you, what's next? Because there's a bunch of what next, and we have to continue to have our eyeballs ready for what's next.
Thank you so much. That just makes me want to go back and touch on leadership again, and how, being a leader and being able to see what comes next and what is making, strides in media and entertainment, things like TikTok and Facebook, taking Instagram, putting reels on Instagram. People definitely go from TikTok to Instagram, just looking at reels over and over again all day. And how that is affecting ads, and how that is affecting people when they're thinking, how do I want to promote this product? Are we going to use a TikTok, or are we going to use an Instagram reel? Are we going to use both? Are we going to make it 1 minute, 2 minutes? I know TikTok has a version for 3 minutes, but Instagram doesn't. And maybe because Instagram knows that short form video, anything under 1 minute, is what's going to promote and do best in terms of advertisement. I know Instagram also is mainly focusing on shopping, not really video content as much, because reels really are making that a core thing.
Yeah, as someone who cares about the advertising ecosystem, I'm very excited where we are. There have never been more choices for different kinds of content to be married up with different kinds of advertising, right? If you look at short form advertising, of things like TikTok and Instagram and Reels, all the way through the traditional Super Bowl commercial, which each 30 seconds costs $7 million. There's a really interesting change taking place, and that is that I can personalize and create content across all of those channels. And so I would encourage. I think if I'm a marketing manager planning a media budget, I'm looking at, okay, if I'm doing reputational advertising, or even if I'm launching a new product, I'm going to be looking. I have to have a great social strategy, right? Because when you have a social strategy, you're really touching people, and you're touching them where they are. Literally, if they're in their car looking at their phone as a passenger in that car, if they're on the train, if they're walking, if they're sitting at a bus bench, no matter where people are, usually they're engaging with their phone. And so if you're just doing television ads, you're missing a whole lot of engagement of consumers and trust building with consumers. And I think that's where the digital piece has changed. We used to say, like, okay, how many hours are people watching TV a day? Oh, they're watching TV 3 hours a day. Oh, that's a lot of television for advertising. Well, think how much people are engaged on their phones every day. Literally, it's 7 or 8 hours a day. It's triple television, right? And they were telling us we were watching too much TV for the last 20 years, right? So now you have this engagement vehicle where you're influencing, and advertisers have the ability to touch someone across Facebook, across Instagram, across Reels, across Snapchat, across all kinds of platforms, right? Even platforms like Waze, where if I'm driving down the street, a Burger King or a McDonald's ad could show up because it knows I'm right in the vicinity of one of those restaurants. And so if I'm an advertiser, I'm looking for how do I use these different channels to develop trust, to develop a product positioning, and to drive active engagement. And active engagement, for those that don't know, is, if you have a television ad, you always want the ability to have a call to action, right? How do I get someone to not just see a Super Bowl commercial, but I want to actually go out and buy that Nissan, right? Or I want to go out and buy that dress or that whatever's being advertised. Well, quite frankly, if I'm advertising online, you're one click away from making that transaction. I'm on Instagram, I can make that transaction, which they have a Shopify deal and a big commerce deal where I can click a button and buy that whatever it is immediately right there. The call to action is push the button and buy. And so that is a significant change as to compared to how television and radio advertising, which was all about entertainment, promotion, sports, but the call to action, you couldn't just make the purchase by watching television. You had to go into a store, you had to call a 1-800 number, you had to do something else. Now with digital, I'm able to make that transaction immediately. And advertisers love this, and they love the exploration that it makes. And I'll tell you, it's opened up the opportunity for a lot of additional people to be in this business. Because let me tell you, when you start looking at people of color in the United States and even around the world, we set the tone in many cases for trending in fashion and what's next. And having a very good ability to study that behavior and leverage that behavior and target that behavior really aggressively and upfront is really important and is really optimal for the industry. Hope this has been a helpful answer to you, because you hit one of the areas that I'm very excited about, and that's the change in advertising.
Yes, me too. I really wonder how, as you're talking about bringing in new people and creating new jobs for people, especially people of color, how being a teacher has helped you in those spaces, how you've been able to teach, this grand world of marketing across all forms of media, helping people understand that, it doesn't stop at Twitter and Instagram and TikTok. You have to use Pinterest. You have to use Waze. You have to think about how people are going on to these shopping websites. What things do they want to see when they're shopping on Shein or any of these places? And especially how that ranges when it comes to the different demographics that you're reaching.
No, absolutely. It's such a significant change. And let me just tell you, I am a big believer that, steel sharpens steel. So you have to have strong things to and be around strong people to continue to sharpen yourself and sharpen your skill set and be thoughtful about what the future looks like and what your future looks like in particular. The one thing I love about teaching, in the same steel sharpens steel, is that I'm teaching in areas. I teach digital strategy, I teach research in a digital component space, I teach digital technologies, and I teach digital marketing. So I teach sort of in that digital ecosystem. Now, why is that important? It's important because the things that I'm teaching, I'm not teaching English or other really wonderful subjects that we have to know. I'm teaching subjects that are changing, and they're changing year after year. So it's not that you're just teaching and learning. You're learning underlying concepts, but you're also learning what will be those future technologies that will change our world, right? That will transform our ability, including how we're doing this interview. This interview 20 years ago would have been a horrible experience. And now we're talking as if we're in the same building. We're having a good conversation. The edits will be fantastic. And it's all brought about by new technology that somebody invested in. And so, I would say that as I look forward, the thing I love about teaching in the areas that I teach is that I'm able to talk with real users of digital, real users, millennials who are pioneering and are digital natives, and watching their behavior. That's what's going to continue to drive us forward. When I look at Even how advertisers target. They like to target 18 to 34-year-olds because those people like branding and they're impressionable. You can spend dollars advertising to that group and they'll actually choose your brand, right? If you talk to the average 70-year-old and you advertise towards them, they kind of pick their brands and are in their brands forever, right? You're not going to influence them quite as much, but you can take a younger demographic and really influence them. Well, when I'm teaching, and I'm teaching young college students or master's degree students, and those are the people that will be leading change. And so steel sharpens steel. The best ideas, the best competition, the best thought process, the best ethics, the best inclusion, all these things really matter when you're in the ecosystem of advertising, digital, and technology.
That was a great answer, and I think that teachers are so important, especially as we start thinking about how we're going to help our future generation.
Absolutely.
Yes. And Miss Griffin, thank you so much for joining us. We were just talking about leadership and teaching as it transcends media and digital marketing. And I would just love to know your thoughts on that, how media has shifted the way that we're teaching people and how media has shifted leadership as a whole. How media has helped us decide, what comes next. How are we going from here to there?
Uh-oh. Well, Dana, I'll take your lead. There she is.
Oh, okay, I'm back. Hello, and thank you so much. And hi, Jeffrey, as well. I just want to say thanks so much for having me. Media has shifted so much, and it's interesting because, and I missed the beginning parts of your conversation, so I might come in a different space. But as someone who works in brand and leadership development, we have been constantly telling people to prepare to be in a position to share at that level. But now that everyone has this platform that they have created for themselves, it's even more important that you're prepared for the platform. And so it has exposed people in spaces, it's allowed people to develop in real time, and it's really had a great it's given us a great sense for people who are prepared to be able to take their message, their platform, their business to the next level in that space. Are you able to hear me? I know you kind of went out for a minute.
And, Jeffrey, what do you think about?
Well, I love what she just said because, there's never, from a creative point of view, there's never been a more, an easier way to be creative in your advertising and your brand development. And there are different ways to compete. And, one area that I would just remind people is that, if you look at the big brands, and, I grew up with big brands, Disney, and, Marvel, ESPN, the big brands of entertainment that dominate their fields. And in order to engage and compete in that space, you have to have leverage, right? And your leverage is you got to join one of them. Right? Same in music. You needed to join, make it up, Sony Music or Universal Music to have your music heard. Well, if you think about it from a leadership perspective in media now, there are so many companies that are leveraging tools, e-commerce tools, branding tools, advertising tools like TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, and others, YouTube. And they're able to create their little brand, brand of shoes, brand of eyelashes, brand of brushes, all kinds of, and actually compete against much larger competitors because they can get exposure to the marketplace, and those consumers have the ability to purchase. So I've never been more excited. And from a diversity point of view, that allows, most of the time when you're talking any level of diversity, you're talking about, okay, here's our big category, and then here's our diversity category. Well, now when I'm looking online and I'm looking at these audiences, I can customize my plans and really target heavily individual communities at a very depth level. And I love this new capabilities. And by the way, I credit Netflix, I credit Amazon, and I credit Hulu in particular for creating much more diverse content and producing that and getting that on air, because that's also allowed for different kinds of stories to be told and different advertisers to jump on board with those different kinds of stories. That wasn't always the case when you had big Sony, big Disney, big Fox, big BBC. Every once in a while you'd have a diverse storyline. But now I can go to Netflix and I can see all the content I want for almost any community I want to target, or any community that wants to be entertained. And I love just where we are right now.
And I think it's so, just to add to that, when you talk about story matters. When we're talking about branding, story matters. For us, most of the time that we spend, yes, we help companies and corporations and that type of thing develop their brands, but we have a program called Discover the Brand of You, where we are literally helping people discover their executive brand, who they are, why they're brought to the table, how they're able to tell their story. So that, when teaching and talking to young adults is so important, and even young professionals and executives, helping them to understand you don't just work for the company, you're working with the company. We help create professional partnerships. So how am I a partner in this space? Well, you can't just become a partner. You have to come with a part of that partnership to the table. You need to know who you are, where you're going, why you're here. And it's not enough to just take a job, but to understand your mission and why your mission is so important for what your partnership is serving. And that's one of the things that's so important in leadership development, is to understand how your mission is aligned with where you're going. So no matter where you go, you are still aligned and your brand is represented because it's true to who you actually are and where you're going to go next. When we're talking about building the brand and building a legacy, it's how do I build this legacy? How do I build the brand of my legacy? Well, you have to create supportive systems. It's not just about you being an effective leader. I'm so sorry. It's not about you just being an effective leader. It's about you creating structure that's going to still stay when you're gone. So I always say, if you're not leaving a legacy, you're just leaving. But what are you leaving other people with based on your particular brand? And how do you make the brands that you work with better?
Well said. Absolutely.
Thank you.
And I would love to go off that and talk about how media it's so different now, because when people are promoting their project, whether they have the backing of a studio or the backing of even a commercial team, they can just promote it on their social media. Someone can start a makeup line, like Rihanna can start her makeup line, and she can just post about it on Instagram and she could sell it out. She doesn't necessarily need all the things that you would do to make a Super Bowl commercial or any commercial, but she does, because she knows that branding is important and that adds to the legitimacy of her product. I would love to know your guys' thoughts on how to make a product legitimate when only using media and entertainment.
Can you explain that a little bit further? That question? Dana, can you clarify your question?
So, when we're using media in these times, we think that social media or TikTok, Instagram, even just using something like Safari, just digital media, that is the way that people go. That's kind of the way that works nowadays. I feel like we were talking earlier about television and how people would watch the Super Bowl with 30-second television slots. But now another way, and a kind of more successful way to talk to people's understanding of a product, is to post about it. And what do you guys think about that?
Yeah, it's funny because I think you add, but look, if you have 20 million people, there's 112 million people that watch the Super Bowl in the United States this year. So Super Bowl ads are still really powerful, really important. The difference is now if I'm a campaign strategist, I can leverage a whole lot of other tools to personalize and get deeper and more intimately connected with that audience. And I think that's, so I want to be clear. Television is still a big, powerful vehicle. It will remain a powerful vehicle when you have these large events where people come together, right? It's not just the number one viewed program in the United States. It's the number one viewed Super Bowl, the number one viewed program in the world for women. And so that's very interesting. So, it brings in a much wider audience, even than a regular football program. So where I'm going is, when you look at the other side of this, these other areas are where the growth is from sort of personalized. And think about it for a second. If I'm Amazon has Amazon Prime, so if I'm looking at the data, I can tell of my 7 million make it up subscribers, and I'm just making that number up. But if I have 7 million viewers, I can tell what they're watching, how long they're watching, what they're rewinding, what they're binging, what categories they watch. But also, Amazon also has a browser. They have Amazon.com where I can actually browse and determine what things does Jeffrey Thompson need in his household. Mm-hmm. What is he interested in personally? And that is a significant change. So I can tell what people want to do from an entertainment point of view, but I now can start to get data on, well, what is the shape of Jeffrey Thompson, using myself, Jeffrey Thompson's life, based upon what he searches on. Oh, does he need a pool cleaner? Does he need a horseback saddle, which tells them I own a horse or a farm or something? Is he looking for a new car? If he's looking for a new car, what color is that new car? So if you ask the question, the digital media, like even what Amazon and others have, you have the ability to really personalize. And then I'm going to go back to the third and really important piece. I know what people want to do entertainment-wise. I kind of know what they're browsing around. But now I have their credit card, and I have their address. And they push the button and can buy whatever I'm selling them immediately. That is a significant game changer. It's the reason why Amazon is now always neck and neck with being in the top 5 of most valuable companies. But others are doing the same thing, right? Netflix does some of the same things. Disney is attempting to do some of the same things, and many of the other media companies. YouTube started all this, right? But the others, TikTok and Instagram, they're all sort of doing some version of this. And so where we go and where we are with it, I think that there's a lot of leadership abilities. One thing I tell everybody that I teach, you need to be a product expert. You need to be an expert in the area you're in, whether it's marketing, finance, legal, HR, whatever it is. But let's be very clear. Whatever industry you go in, you need to become an expert in that industry, right? And you want to add value, become an expert well beyond just the media and the marketing. What's causing that industry to grow? What's limiting it? What are executives challenged with? And that's how you start to gain value, as not just in the expert category you're in, but well beyond, to understanding how you become an industry expert and add a different kind of value as you grow in your career.
Absolutely. I love what you said, because it really is about learning the language of the business, learning to speak the language of the business that you're in. And there's been such a shift in the mindset of gaining data. It used to be you'd have to survey people and it was a favor, right? I wonder if they'll tell me this information. And now, because of how media has changed and social media has changed the game, it's really a tailored approach. We're asking you this information because we want to know what it is that you're really interested in. We want to make sure that we tailor our needs to what it is that you're doing. Sometimes it's a bit scary, the fact that it's so tailored that now it's popping up on my phone, certain things with music. But it really is, it really takes that branding, that marketing to the next level. And it's interesting because oftentimes when you mentioned the makeup line before, Rihanna has a whole team that has decided that they would help her with this whole branding. But oftentimes people want to market before they brand. and there is a difference. And before you get into that whole marketing space of social media, you have to make sure that you're setting up your brand before you're advertising it.
Oh my God, you just touched on something I think is so great, and I'm just, you're not, no one asked the question, but and you're getting at it. It's called.
Thank you.
Uh-oh. Did I hear some noise there? But being
It's
authentic.
feedback on I'm hearing you after, but I'm listening.
Okay, well, I apologize, but it's about being authentic.
Sorry, we need to wrap up here on the other piece. So thank you so much for joining. And Dana, thank you so much for your participation.
Okay, well, thank you. And Jeffrey, I will connect with you on LinkedIn as well, so I can hear your other thought. But I'm
Please
listening. Yes, if this is it, I'll definitely connect with you.
We should absolutely. Thanks, Dana.
Thanks, Dana.
Thank you so much. Thank you for joining us.
You're welcome. Okay, bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.
So Dana, I'm going to introduce you to Mr. Daniel Walker, fellow producer.
Hello, it's so nice to meet you.
And he's going to answer a few more of the questions sort of directly. So please.
Thank you. Thank you so much for being here.
Directly here.
Yes.
And where am I looking?
The camera is right there. We can look at each other. It's fine. Thank you for being here. Before we were talking about media, entertainment, and how leadership and, technology has just completely changed in today's entertainment age. And we started off talking about teaching and how teaching can really help influence the way that we shift and change our mindsets when it comes to this new age. So what do you think about the access to technology and how we would teach that to an incoming generation in terms of the new wave of entertainment?
Interesting that you would ask me that. So my name is Dr. Daniel Walker, and I run the Long Beach Indie International Film Festival, but I'm also a professor. And one of the things that we do at Long Beach Indie, and it's been the connective piece between myself and Kevin Clark, has been this issue about pipelines. And how do we try to create pipelines for our youth into these beautiful careers in entertainment, media, the arts, digital media, all those things. And so when we start talking about teaching, one of the things I'm really concerned with is what the K-12 system looks like in terms of teaching and preparing. And even at the Cal State, UC, and the private college level, what does that look like in terms of the teaching? And I think part of it is we have to teach the holistic thing about being a creative entrepreneur versus just the issue of being the specific skill, right?
Yeah.
We tended to, in the past, you can imagine somebody said, be a screenwriter, right?
Mm-hmm.
Be a screenwriter, be a producer, be a lighting tech, but in reality, right now, it's like you have to kind of learn so many other pieces because they make your life easy. The whole issue of technology. I have a big thing for me in my company that I try to only spend 2 hours a day on the phone. 2 hours a day, like working at it, like the thing. And of course, I'm at a different level because I've been working at it long enough, and I'm in a period of manifesting the seeds that I've put in the ground years ago. But everything else I say, I can manage things all around the world because of my phone and because of these apps. I have designers who I've never met in my life who design things for me, sound people I've never met in my life, right? And so this issue of teaching us how to not just access technology, but how do we make technology make our life easier? How do we allow ourselves to expand and exponentially grow our brand, our product, our service, because of the fact that we have these technological innovations that allow us to, you know what I mean? Like me and my girlfriend always talk about this notion of like collapsed time frames, right? Because of the fact that we have these apps and these ways of communicating with each other through technology and innovations that allow somebody to punch in on a, on a production, on the reel. The fact that we can do all these different editing things. Without technology, to move into this world that we're into right now is really, really archaic. and it won't do anything for you. So we have to do our job, K through 12, community colleges, universities, of talking about the real skills that people need on the other side, but also balancing that with these beautiful technological pieces, which are not technological, but qualitative pieces. The notion of storytelling. What does that really look like? You can do all this technology, but the core of everything that we do in entertainment media is storytelling, right? So keeping up on the technology piece, but also making sure that people care about stories.
Right. I completely 100% agree. I went to school for film and media studies, and storytelling was kind of at the center of everything that we learned. Going off of what you said about just this ever-growing, you can't go into it without knowing anything about technology. I think that transcends just media and entertainment. I think that's everything. I think technology has become such an important skill that everyone kind of needs to be like sharpened in on, whether it's just, learning Microsoft Excel sheets or learning how to do a simple poster in any like editing software, just learning how to brand. Branding and technology, I feel like, go hand in hand. What do you think about that?
Well, I think branding goes with life.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So just as some of the speakers you had on before talked about, you need to get to the brand before you get to the marketing.
Okay.
But you have to know who you are and what you want to do, because otherwise you end up going all kinds down directions that make no sense just because you're trying to chase a dollar. In essence, reinventing yourself for every job description or opportunity, as opposed to saying, this is who I am, putting that out into the world. And so in that case, the technology piece is important because, one, you can find out more about yourself, right? You have the ability to get deeper. Let me rewind a little bit. So my brand is, I'm Dr. Daniel Walker, I'm a storyteller and social change agent who uses history, spirituality, and the arts to bring positive change to the world. So that's my thing, right? And it's crazy because as I look align and you look at all these technological pieces and devices that you have that can help you in this journey to be able to do it, it still goes back to, but what is my brand? You know what I mean? What is my brand? I'm an educator. That's the thing for me. So when people see me, right now, that's going to come out because it's just who I am. I'm a social entrepreneur. That's just who it is. So that I now reject things that don't look like me. They may look money-wise like me good. Y'all maybe like, there's some cash right there, right? This is beautiful. But the reality is I can't go down that road because it's not true to my brand. It's not true to my brand. It's going to take me in a direction I don't want to go. Technology won't help that. It'll only exponentially exacerbate that problem because people will think of me as someone who I'm not. And that's the last thing you want to do. I always want to be able to walk in my essence. Like if somebody sees me on the street, they know I'm still that same dude. So that's really what your brand is. So if I can look at you at a coffee table, in a restaurant, at a bar, down the street, you are still the same person. So I'm still talking about stories. Always going to be there. You see what I mean? I'm going to be a social change agent. That's just going to be there. And it's always going to be using history, spirituality, and the arts to make that happen. That's just going to be there. So the technology can expand it, but it can also sometimes make you follow other people. And that's not you. And you need to realize who you are first.
Yeah. So branding comes first, especially when it comes to leadership. Having a brand is way more important than understanding because people can always teach you. People will always be there to teach you what you need, but people can't teach you how to be yourself.
Yes. And leadership is a different thing, right? I mean, leadership is leadership, right? Yeah. And so you see all kinds of people try to create themselves as a leader online, but it's not what you are. Right. Doesn't mean that you can't become an online leader because people are, right? There's been all kinds of social justice movements in the last 10, 15 years that have been exponentially, their reach, their broadening, the knowledge of them has increased because of social media. I'm not saying that because there are people who can work that out, right? But at the same time, you can't go and perpetrate the fraud, as we used to say. Put yourself out there as some leader. You still have to be able to gain the hearts and the minds of the people, right? And that's about what you do, not just about what you post. So,
yes. And speaking of doing and posting, people can present themselves as a brand and they can go out and get the job. But a lot of times what we post can really impact our jobs and our work life and what we end up doing in our future. A lot of times the internet can end up like kind of destroying everything that you built up and everything that you worked for.
Well, I would say this. There's two ways in which I look at this. Because one is, so I'm a historian, and because of the fact that I work in that field. There's a lot of engagement, especially in the past few years, about historical monuments, about historical the way we tell history, this telling of history, right? You can even talk about debates people have today about critical race theory, also. So it's debating, can we tell stories anymore? You get me? You know, which is crazy, right? And so sometimes when you think about the internet, you look at this big behemoth that's out there, right? And you post stuff that is not you, it comes back, right? And but it also comes back in a good way. If that's just who you are, I say that because I was consulting for a school district, and someone asked me a question about what I feel about these monuments, and they really wanted to say that we need to preserve these Confederate monuments, but they were couching it in this really interesting conversation about, are we losing history? Now I know that I've written articles about, I've been online about all, so I got to go back to who I am, right? I got to go back to, no matter what the context might have been, the reality is I got to go back to who I am. And what am I? A person who says this stuff is junk, right? You know what I mean? And so I have to stick with it. I can't change. And that's why it's so important to be yourself, to walk in it. If you like a glass of wine at 6 o'clock in the afternoon, you should post that you like a glass of wine at 6 o'clock in the afternoon. So if somebody sees you with a glass of wine at 6 o'clock in the afternoon, they understand that's who you are. You get me? You can't walk around with this confining notion of who you are. You got to truly be yourself. So if there's anything I could give anybody, it is be yourself. Your stories are your stories. Your community, when you tell those stories, the world will then gravitate towards the stories. You don't have to pick a story somewhere else. Be yourself. The most personal is the most universal. And if everybody just gets that as a storyteller, then you don't run and find other stories. You tell your truth. Your truth is your brand. Your truth is who you are. Your truth is your reality. You get me? So you just go all the way through with that same mentality, and then you'll be all right.
I think that's great. Even in terms of leadership, I think that's great advice. You know, be who you are and stay true to it. Thank you so much for joining us and for giving us your wisdom. I really appreciate it. It was an honor to meet you.
Well, thank you for doing what you do. Boom.
Sure.
Looking forward to talking.
Thank you. Thank you so much for joining us, Mitch and Kevin. I'm very excited for this conversation. I'd like to really jump off and start talking about. Oh, actually, I think yes.
I look like my mom.
Okay. Hello. Thank you for joining us, Mitch. I'm so excited for our conversation on mentorship and what it takes to be a mentee and the good traits of a mentor. Starting off, how would you say mentorship got you to where you are today, and what has that been like?
I think mentorship is always a unique thing. Definitely when you have guys that you look up to as doing the right thing, especially in business or how they carry themselves outside of business. Mentorship is very important. I think with us being professional athletes, sometimes the parents kind of turn over their kids, and we're kind of like their mentor. But you have to make sure that you follow the right mentor in certain situations. But I think it's very important to have, especially in the young kids' life.
Yes, I played soccer for 10 years. I played competitive soccer. I was the highest level you could play, and it taught me a lot about leadership and how to be a leader, even if you aren't, the team captain.
Right.
Everyone on the field is a leader, and that even transitions into media and entertainment. Especially if you want to drive your own career, you have to know how to lead yourself. And a lot of times that you need a mentor. You need someone who's done it before.
Exactly.
How would you say, in terms of being an athlete or even going into the digital media space, what are the best ways to go about finding a mentor?
Yeah, in this space, it's like anything else. It's very difficult because it's brand new, and in this digital space, in this meta world, and the crypto world, and our world is really changing as we speak. The whole ideal is to search, just like anything else. If you want to be at the best school, you have to kind of research and try to find those things. Very difficult to find. It took me 3 or 4 years to try to find the best niche for me that I can learn on the fly. And because there's so much information that you got to have in this space, and it's steady growing, and so some of the lingo that you don't know, you have to kind of just relearn. And that's what it's all about. If you want to actually be good in something, you have to really kind of work at it and study it. You just can't wing it.
It's almost like being a mentor for yourself. Like
No question about it.
you got to do it for yourself,
Right.
and that would make you a good person that someone would want to train.
Right.
Someone sees
Right.
how hard you're working, and
Yes.
then they want to help you out.
Yes.
That's normally how.
Yeah,
it
I
goes.
think for especially for the young kids, you gotta understand that sports kind of bridge you or actually kind of help you in every different field, especially in the business world, because you're gonna have a lot of no's. You're gonna have a lot of people turning you away. Just like in sports, you're gonna have some bad games.
Right.
You're gonna have some bad months. You're
Right.
gonna have some bad weeks, and so it's all about brushing yourself off and really kind of focusing on what you really and truly. If it's something that you really and truly want to do, you have to continue to keep practicing it and try to be the best you possibly can.
I think that's very important,
Yes.
especially in the way that sports translates in this digital space. Someone falls down. My sister's a competitive soccer player. She falls down and she gets right back
That's
up.
right.
And if she doesn't get up, it's one of those like we're having a few bad weeks.
Exactly.
We gotta
Exactly.
get ourselves back out there. But a few bad weeks don't break an athlete,
That's right.
and I think that translates the same here.
Yeah, and it's all about teaching and it's all about learning. And I think if you put learning and teaching, or it's just like when you're going out for a sport and you're trying to learn a different move, you have to put time and effort to it.
Right.
It's just it. I think it's very important to do the work in the dark so you can show out in front of everyone. And so if you do the work in the dark when no one's watching you, You have confidence, and like anything else, to overcome some of those obstacles you're going to have. Because in business, I tell you, I'm in my 50s, so I've had some bad deals, and I had some good deals, and you still got to, each and every time you have to truly kind of learn what you're looking for, what to watch out for, uh, and there's a lot of things out there. It's just like anything else, you just got to really kind of protect yourself.
What advice would you give to young people who would come to you asking for mentorship and guidance? What would be kind of your first piece of advice to them?
Well, first thing is that, if we look at, the world in general, and then it's a big percentage of people really don't like what they do.
Okay.
And you got to find out something that you really truly like what you do, because then that's when you're going to put the most effort to it. I know a lot of people are in a job for just being in a job, and that's cool too, until you figure out, until you make a little money or do whatever you need to do to get into something that you really want to do. So for me, I just saying, if you got to find something that you like, because if you find something that you like, then it's really not work for you. It's really just, educating yourself and like, hey, man, each and every day, I want to learn more. I want to do more. And I think that's the best thing I can tell.
Thank you. That was great. I'd like to turn it over to Kevin Clark of The Car and just ask you, Kevin, what do you think in terms of mentorship in this digital age? What are the key traits in being a mentor to young people?
Okay, so one, I want to thank Mitch, Terrence, and Shane, and Saul, who are operating cameras and the equipment, because they're mentors.
Yes.
They're mentoring Dakar, the organization that we started almost 30 years ago. So it's not just mentoring a person, it's really volunteering and giving your time, your energy, and your heart to something that you believe is worthy of your time, your heart, your effort, your name. So mentoring mentorship is a very big thing for, I think, all the people that are listening to this and that will learn anything, is try understanding that you have to have a big heart, big ears, and a little mouth. Because the only way you can get people to tell you who they are is to draw things out of them, and they don't want to be talked to death.
Right.
So you got to figure out how to relate to them and how to be open and welcome them, with body language, just with access to who you are. And that's not for everybody. So I would say that mentorship is a science that, if you do it well enough, can become an art form. Yeah. So I want to thank some people that are mentors and mentors to be, who are joining us today. First person I want to cite is a person I have not met physically. We've talked on the phone, and I'm connected with him through a project connected to Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. His name is Kyle Mays. So I want to see if we can have Kyle, share a little bit about how mentors have helped to shape his life.
Yeah, so thanks for having me on. And
hey, Kyle.
Hey, how y'all doing?
It's Kevin.
Good to meet you. At least in via video, Kevin again. So I think for me, mentorship has been fundamental to my trajectory as a scholar and a professor. And I have to give a big shout out to my mentor, Dr. Geneva Smitherman. And so Dr. G, as we affectionately called her, wrote a book called Talking and Testifying: The Language of Black America in 1977. It's been reprinted a few times. And it looks at African American culture specifically through the issue of Ebonics, or Black language, or Black English. And she was also a pioneer in creating a school in Detroit, co-founding it, called the Malcolm X Academy in Detroit long ago. So I'm very humble and gracious to have been mentored by her, and she's been and continues to be a mentor. And I was glad to hear the things about mentorship. because mentors are not, some mentors are there for a part of your life, and then some are there for a lifetime. So I'm so grateful, and then now I get to be a mentor to colleagues and younger scholars as well, even though I'm not that old either. But it's a very important thing for me.
Okay. Thank you so much for being here and for meeting us. That was great insight. Mentorship is, it really does help people find their way when it comes to just like finding your niche. Having a niche and having a brand is really important. I would love to know your insight on what it takes to kind of navigate that and to fine tune your brand and your niche when you're looking for a career.
Yeah, I think one of the major things for young people to realize is patience. I mean, you have to be very patient, not only in your own journey, but also be willing to learn and to make mistakes. And it doesn't even matter how old you are. And for me, as a scholar, I write books. So I just wrote a book called An Afro-Indigenous History of the United States, looking at the relationship between African Americans and Native Americans throughout U.S. history, and the longer history of colonialism and enslavement. And I think there are young people who can be very impatient, not only with society, with themselves often, and unwilling to often learn about mistakes. And those things are important to do. It's important to, make mistakes, but also learn from them and continue to grow. And at least in my profession, one of the key things, and I was talking to a friend today, you have to write. And when I'm teaching courses, you can be an engineer, you can be a math major, history, English, African American studies, what have you. You always have to write. You have to write reports. You have to write emails. You have to, always be engaged in all sorts of things, and also read widely. One of the best books I've read this year thus far is the book about Raekwon the chef from Wu-Tang Clan, right? And of course, I'm reading serious history things, but I also like to keep abreast about popular culture, biographies, and I read the autobiography of Malcolm X every summer since I was 16 years old. So for me, reading and writing in a variety of mediums are kind of essential to what I do, and I think is essential to the development of any young person out there.
You so much. I think that is so true, that writing in English and just knowing the words to use, the specifics to use, that can be very helpful when it comes to navigating in this industry and in this world. I thank you so much for joining us. I would like to turn it back over to Kevin.
Well, yeah, I've got a list of friends that I want to just get in and out of an introduction because they've been so important in mentoring Dakar and mentoring my life. I don't know. There's a whole list, but Terrence, do we? Yeah. So Cal, again, man, as a new friend, I absolutely want to make the invitation to join us as we impact these students and make the make this road easier for us to try and create the next generation of mentors.
Yeah, let's try to make something happen.
Create a television program, and Digital Pathway Initiative is very important in making sure people know how to read, write, produce, present themselves, and create story. So Brown Bag TV is what we created, is a way for us to do all of this and deliver it during lunchtime. So hello, Dave.
Hi, everybody.
Dave, if you can. Dave, if you can, just share a little bit about how we've met and what you believe Brown Bag TV can do as a mentorship.
Okay. Hi, my name is David Cohen. Right now, I am a content designer at
I think we've
WhatsApp.
got Dave. You want to move? Who else do we? Okay.
Hi, my name is David Cohen. I'm a content designer at WhatsApp. I've been working with Kevin and Dakar for, I don't even know how long now. Decade, at least. It's been a long time. I met Kevin through my work when I was working at an advertising agency. And since then, I've been supporting him, in particular with a focus on Brown Bag TV. Brown Bag TV, we're experiencing a little of it right here, but the idea is to get students and people who want to learn by doing.
I don't think that's like up.
I'm stopping because I'm
Hello,
hearing.
sorry, we've been having just a few technical difficulties.
Yeah, I know.
But I think we're back now.
Okay. Did you hear anything that I've said so far? I don't know where to start again. I'm fine to start at the beginning, but I just want to know where to start.
No, apologies.
No. Stop, David. Free. This is the world we live in right now. Okay, let's go from the top. Hi, my name is David Cohen. I'm a content designer at WhatsApp. I have been working with Kevin and Dakar for more years than I know. I think it's somewhere around 10 years, with a focus specifically on Brown Bag TV. And Brown Bag TV, we're experiencing it right now to a small extent. The idea of Brown Bag TV is to have students learn how to create digital media and content by creating digital media and content. So learn by doing. Depending on how Brown Bag TV is put together and who's participating, there could be all sorts of different things. But the idea is that students work with mentors or instructors to actually generate real content. So they would write it, they would tech it, film it, edit it, and then figure out ways to distribute it. This is an example of how you can distribute it, but it could be on websites. It could be on closed circuit TV. The idea with brown bag TV is that it's enormously flexible depending on who the partners are. So if the partners might be an educational organization, the content could be streamed throughout that organization. So students in a school could watch content that the students create, anything like that. And it's up to the students and the partners to determine the kind of content. So it could be entertainment oriented, it could be documentary oriented, or it could be something like today where it's more or less a one-off, but then it's generated to be used at other times. So it just really depends who's involved at any given time. But what doesn't change is the idea of students who have an interest in doing this, learning by doing and by working with people who know how to do it and how to instruct them through it.
Thank you, David. I would love to know your thoughts on how WhatsApp has transformed into this just super broad communicating service. I know that I use WhatsApp to talk to a friend that I have in Europe, and that is our only form of communication. And how WhatsApp is still important in terms of digital media today, and how it's still, affecting and changing and a way to impact people's lives.
Yeah, that's a great question. What I particularly like about working at WhatsApp is it is the biggest communication platform in the world with nearly 3 billion users, and it's for everybody. So we work hard in designing it to make it really understandable by anybody. We talk about, would your Indian granny understand how to work with this? So it's really a way of doing it in a way that works for everybody. It's simple to use. It's really easy to understand. And also, technically, it can work just about anywhere. So in third world countries, there isn't always great infrastructure. There isn't great bandwidth. And WhatsApp is enormously light. So that even when your internet is bad, WhatsApp still works. On top of all that, one of the great things about WhatsApp is that it takes privacy very seriously. Now, everybody takes privacy seriously, or everybody says they take privacy seriously in this day and age, right? It's just the buzzword. But WhatsApp has a special encryption, end-to-end encryption, and it was the first of the messaging apps to do this. And we still take this enormously seriously. Basically, nobody except for you and the person you're communicating with can see the content of your communications. There's some minor exceptions to that when you're communicating with a business, but that's a very small part of WhatsApp. And the company really holds this close. So as you know, WhatsApp is a part of Meta, formerly known as Facebook. And Facebook, say what you will, and there's a lot of stuff to say about it, but it's an ad serving platform. And so it succeeds by knowing a lot about its users through data and what they're doing and showing them the right ads. That's just the deal that you get when you're on Facebook. WhatsApp is not like that at all. We don't do any data sharing, and there's no ads within the app. So it stays super private, and I think that's the other thing that people really like. So easy to use anywhere in the world and super private. I mean, that is the combination that people want nowadays. They want to be able to use technology to be close to the people that are important to them in a way that feels very safe and secure.
Before I move on to Kevin, you say that WhatsApp is one of the easiest apps to use and it's very streamlined. I wonder how we could take that and use it in other media settings, and use it with Facebook and Instagram. Parents are always saying, Instagram's so hard to use. What does WhatsApp do that those apps could do to make it easier as well?
Well, so that's a great question. we work very closely alongside our colleagues in Instagram. It's also part of Meta, and Messenger, also a part of Meta. Sorry, my dog is right here and he wants to get in on the act, so you're going to hear him barking. There are a lot of differences, though, with the level of sophistication of the users and the level of sophistication of the apps themselves. The thing with WhatsApp is that it's just baked in as a basic principle. Instagram, I think, potentially doesn't want to be easy to use for adults, or it's not the same kind of a communication. So WhatsApp is more or less like a telephone. It is a tube between you and the person on the other end. Instagram is not quite the same thing. So it really comes down to the intent of the app. Instagram shows ads. Instagram is a place where you can put up pictures and people can comment on them, but you're not communicating directly, right? It's not like a tube from my mouth to your ear. It's more like a place where I put a picture and you enjoy that picture and you tell me how much you enjoyed it. And then I put a heart on you telling me how much you enjoyed it. The simplicity is something that WhatsApp is dedicated to doing, but I don't know that other apps do that. Now, how can we bring that to all sorts of different places? I'll tell you that every designer, every interaction designer wants to make their experience as simple, intuitive, and easy as possible, but that's really hard. So doing things that are difficult is easy, not to pull it off, but to create something that's hard to use is easy. To create something that's easy to use is really hard. It takes a long time, a lot of experimentation, and a lot of working through user testing to do this. And it's something that WhatsApp is really focused on. I like to think that we're a bit of the envy of other platforms when they look at how easy WhatsApp is to use. But I do know, because I've had these exact conversations, that sometimes they say, well, that doesn't matter. We don't design for the Indian granny. And WhatsApp does. And it's just a matter of who we do it for, rather than who Instagram might do it for, or TikTok, or Snapchat, right? Those are for kids. Those definitely don't want adults involved. If adults are confused by TikTok, so much the better.
Thank you so much, audience. That's really what tells you. I'm going to turn it over to Kevin.
Okay. Well, we're racing to try and get some very important people on. We're going to show a clip, right? And then we're going to go to Jen O'Bray. So thank you again for all the people who are joining us virtually as well as physically here at the City Club in LA. And we'll see you soon. We can get out of here, man. Yeah, it's my outro.
My nearest blood. I have stood in battle. The balls like hail were flying all around me. The man standing next to me was shot by my side. His blood spotted upon my clothes, which I wore for weeks. My nearest blood, except that which runs in my veins, was shed for liberty. Liberty is dear to my heart. I cannot endure the thought that my countrymen should be slaves. Revolutionary War veteran Samuel Harris.
Hello, I'm Colin Powell, and I was an American soldier for 35 years. I was a Black American soldier, and I followed in a long tradition of Black men and women who have served this nation since long before our Revolutionary War. For so many years, they served their nation without their nation ever serving them. They served because they believed in this nation. They believed in the promise of our democracy. They believed in what the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution said. But for so many years, they were denied the rights and the privileges that other Americans enjoyed. Their story isn't well known. Their story was suppressed. Historians did not write about it well enough. But there's a wonderful story. It is the story of a group of Americans who never lost their love of this country, never lost their faith in what the Founding Fathers had promised. And that's why this story is simply called For Love and Liberty.
To the war has gone to the war in the ranks of death. In the ranks of death, you find his father's soul has girded on, and his wild heart's son, he held him there. Shall serve you, so and break free. The song made for the pure and free. It shall never sound never again.
The record of this nation's African American servicemen and women is a heroic story draped in irony. Why, despite enormous injustice, did these determined individuals fight so valiantly for freedoms they themselves did not enjoy? The answer to this question can be found in the letters, diaries, thoughts, and reflections of those who were there. Their words are relevant to every American and speak of courage, honor, duty, and sacrifice for love of liberty. I'm Halle Berry, and this is their story.
Wow, what a fantastic clip. It's an honor to be here on the stream. My name's Shawnee Dell. I'm a student mentor. I've been working with Dakar and for the past 3 years, and it's so cool to see how things have grown and progressed over the years, from a couple of students working together with Kevin to just all these wonderful, beautiful, amazing, talented people coming together to share their knowledge, to share their skills, and to share their experiences on not just mentorship, but also on history and also on digital content curation and technology. It's an accumulation of so much talent, time, and dedication. So I'm glad to be here, and I'm very grateful that we've been able to put all this together. So thanks for having me, and let me go ahead and pass this on to my co-host here for this little conversation we're about to have. To Arnold Gordon Bray, General Arnold Gordon Bray. If you would, sir, please introduce yourself. Oh, you're on mute, sir. Well,
Sometimes you got to be smarter than technology that you're playing with. First of all, thank you very much, Tony. I'm very glad to be here, and very glad to have this conversation with those who are willing to listen. I spent some time listening to Sequoia, who I've known and been back and forth with in various times through Dakar, as a matter of course, and I heard what he was talking about. And you know, the great irony is that he is part of the nation's informational capacity, and because of what he's doing and the things he's working with, all of this is an intersectional discussion. You know, as we celebrate African American History Month, and this particular segment of time is being set aside to try to address some of the key concerns: mentorship, being involved in the media, telling the story from the perspective of those who are making the history itself. And we'll get to some of those folks who've been critical. But the first thing is, you know, everybody talks about being in the room. Being in the room. It's access. I love Hamilton because, you know, he is one of my favorite parts is where, you know, Aaron Burr is pissed off because he watched history change around him, but he was so critical to it, and he's thinking that, wow, if I'd have just been in the room where the discussions were taking place. Well, African Americans have been considered not in the room for a long time. And the reason why was not so much reality. It was the media that captured it. And the information that was presented and how it's presented. History written down. History written down is pretty good. History captured, the visual is where the problems lie, especially the visual. And that clip, and that clip you just showed is a 5-minute segment, by the way, of about 6 hours that was culled down from over 10,000 hours to
oh my God.
Yeah, 10,000 hours to make it one. First of all, and it is weathered the storm of authenticity through the Air Force and the Army's historians. And the naval stamp didn't get there yet because it was so long. And naval includes, I mean, it was so much of it is made by Army forces. So anyhow, but that talks about getting, because all it really is about is, first of all, the struggle to full citizenship and the platform for the future. And you know, so the whole goal of you and I in this conversation is to make sure that curmudgeons like me don't make it a conversation all about the past, but more about the future and the promise better. And so, so one of the things I hope we'll do here, and I hope some folks will chime in and ask some and make the different questions difficult, make them difficult, because I was trained to do that. You know, like I said, one of the things that I remember, you know, from combat was I was in Iraq, and some of my guys were holed up in a school, and my company commander, Captain Davis, when I drove up, he told me which way to come into the area, and I came into the area and I looked out, and I saw this mob, a couple hundred folks, and we had almost that same amount of media. And he said, "Sir, we just go right on inside." And I said, "Wow, what's going on?" He said, "Well, sir, we had a shootout." I said, "Well, tell me what happened." And he explained to me. He said, "Well, sir, we actually killed some civilians." I said, "Okay, tell me how you killed the civilians and what transpired." Basically, he said, "Sir, there were 7 specific locations where Iraqis came in with weapons and they were firing from these locations, and my guys returned fire to kill them." I said, "Okay." He said, "Sir, we hit civilians." I said, "Okay." I said, "But you were returning fire?" "Yes, sir." And so I saw the sites. I said, "Okay, take me right to the crowd." He said, "Sir, there's a lot of media out there." I said, "Then we've got to tell the story." And he said, I said, "Now how?" And he said, "Okay." So I said, "Is anything that you told me incorrect or unverifiable?" He said, "Sir, no, sir, we're good." So I went to tell the story. And I had one gentleman who was in the middle of the crowd. He was clearly the agitator. In fact, we were able to validate later on that he was actually part of Al-Qaeda, working inside of the forces, and he was a part of a Sharia sect. Actually, excuse me. He was part of the Sharia sect, not Al-Qaeda, and that was working with some forces to be disruptive.
Right.
And some of the media were, anti-American. That's okay. That's okay. And so we told our story, and then we validated, and then we had some soldiers walking, and people said, "Do you trust them?" I said, "Absolutely," because those are my guys. I trained them to. I said, "Don't lie. You can say anything, just don't lie."
Mm.
And then we checked the hospitals. So we got our story, and all of a sudden the crowd started to dissipate. See, Iraqis they're used to people dying. What they're not used to people is telling them lies and trying to get away with it.
Right.
And I acknowledged, I said, there were 21 civilians that we know of that were shot as part of this process. I got the weapons and the bodies for the guys who had the weapons.
Mm.
So we had done that, and we dissipated. So telling the truth is where we are right now in history. We're trying to get our stories straight.
Yes.
We're trying to get American history correct. And by the way, if we get it right, don't lie, don't elevate it, don't make it, don't try to say that no kidding that the first guy that stepped on the moon was actually a black guy.
Yeah. No, you don't want to tell no tall tales.
Yeah, we're not gonna do that.
Yeah.
We're gonna tell the truth. And by the way,
because
when African American history first started, Carter Woodson, he actually tried to elevate history a little bit to jumpstart it.
Yeah, no, like it's just not something you should do.
And you can imagine what happened, because all of a sudden now there was an effort to discredit all of that work, all of that great work that was actually being done.
Yeah,
so anyhow,
and it's like what I like about not just only the talking points you're talking about, because it's all very relevant. Because when it comes to representation, even when it comes to film or media in particular, just from a background standpoint, it's all about the perspective. It's all about the angle. It's all about how you're telling the story. And especially in this digital age, it's all about the visuals. It's all about, well, how much of it are you going to show? For how long are you showing it? And then you're switching to the next thing to kind of guide your audience down this path, down this visual narrative. And so I definitely could see how history can be written in such a way, or visually told in such a way, where it's misrepresenting the truth. And so I love that you also gave such a solid experience from your own experience during the war and your time out there, because it's very important to know that telling the truth and presenting it in a truthful manner is the right way to go. There might be repercussions, but it's so much easier than lying about it, getting caught in a lie later on, and then just the whole foundation just shakes and crumbles. Everything you built, poof, gone. It's better
what's the worst trait that a liar can have?
Whew. I'd say it's the elevation. like we
A
were talking
bad
about
memory.
earlier. It's like bad memory. That too. Yes, I can see
You
that
know,
because if
yeah,
you can't remember your lies, you're in trouble.
because then you got so authenticity,
That's
you know,
it,
and
yeah.
this really goes back also to, you know, the folks who talk about mentoring.
Yes.
You know, a key trait is being authentic. Being authentic.
It is. And
Making
like
sure, and by the way, that's also a trait of a leader.
it is.
You better have that right because
Mm.
you know, tough news is okay, but it never gets better with age.
Mhm.
It never gets better with age.
It
And
doesn't.
so, you know, as we start to talk about our history, it's important that we're authentic. We talk about it from great spaces. And that clip that you saw,
Mhm.
I talked about who validated it because one, it had to go through a lot of scrutiny. Do you remember the Faith of Our Fathers, the capture of Iwo Jima that was done by Clint Eastwood? And he said, why were there no African Americans in that? And he said, because there weren't any at Iwo Jima. Well, one of the things that clip does is it does some dramatization, by the way, but it's very little, but usually it's only because there was no film at certain places. But in any cases where there was film, like for instance, the combat cameras that were at Iwo Jima, it showed the mortarmen and the ammo bearers, Marines, who were actually there at Iwo Jima. That should have been part of that narrative.
Wow.
More importantly, and equally important, the raising of the flag was taken from an African American cook who provided the shaft for them to put the flag on to raise it, which, by the way, was principally raised by a naval corpsman, which is a naval medic. He was the first person, and the cameraman said, "Can you do that again?" And that's when everybody raced up to be in the photo.
That is crazy cool.
You see,
and General Bray, like, if I may, I just want to say, every time I have a conversation with you, I feel like I learn 20 to 30 new facts about history that blows my mind, and about relevant things that are not only seen in movies and pop culture, but are also seen as iconic when it comes to like films as well. Can't tell you the amount of times I've seen that photo of all the soldiers raising that flag on the hill. We only have a minute left, and so what I like to do in closing to this is just sort of wrap up. What's the main takeaway that we would like to impart with our viewers? And what I want to add to that, to kind of circle and tie in everything that was discussed here in this conversation, this brief moment in history, is that, not only from the mentorships and the representation and the truth, is that it all comes down to these four simple steps to really be the best version of yourself, to really be the best mentor, best student, best anything, is to be it, in order to do it, in order to have it, in order to share it. And you are truly the embodiment of that. You did it. You were being it. You went out. You did it, and then now you have it. You have the experiences, and now you're here on this conversation. You're able to share it. And so that's really like the full circle. I feel like when it comes to anything you're trying to achieve in life, can be boiled down to those four traits. And that's why I would like to leave as a takeaway. Is there anything else that you would like to leave as a takeaway? You've left so many great nuggets of just inspiration.
Well, in short order, and I can't do it in 1 minute, but I can say this to you. It's African American History Month. The military has allowed or enabled us to demonstrate our investment of blood so that we could be not just in the room, but at the table. Because if you're not at the table, you're on the menu.
Indeed. 100%. And you just gotta go out there and do it like the meme. Just do it. General Bray, this has been it's been a pleasure. I hope that we get to have more conversations like this. Thank you, sir. Cool.
Good afternoon. How are you doing?
We've been having a discussion today on mentorship. I'm good. We've been having a discussion today on mentorship and being a mentor, the things that it takes to be a mentor, especially to young people in these days, and how digital media has really changed that and transformed that. I would love to just get some short thoughts from you on just your overall idea of mentorship in this digital age.
Yeah, absolutely. So, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Sharice Henry. I am the Vice President of Workforce Development with Brotherhood Crusade. I think for us, especially in the space that we work in, mentorship is such a crucial relationship to success. And it's one that I think trust and communication is the bedrock of. As the mentor, you're saying, I'm going to open myself up and I'm going to share my experiences. I'm going to, pour into you in regards to the path that I've traversed already, share with you, what has worked and what hasn't. And as the mentee, you say, I'm going to open myself up to receive that information. And I think it's so important, that we continue to reach back and pass the baton, because that's where our success is rooted in, is not having to, recreate the wheel over and over and over again. One of the things that we work on here in the digital age is this is such, a new paradigm for us. We work with a lot of young people who are, looking to enter into this space and learning how to create a whole new economy for themselves. They're not necessarily, looking for college or, looking to go that traditional route. And so for us, it's our responsibility to make sure that we're able to provide them with the information necessary, I think, to be successful. On the TikToks and Instagrams and YouTube. Because they figured out how to monetize that. And like I said, it's a whole nother economy.
I think it's very important, especially now with digital media. Being a mentor to young people is so necessary. A lot of times young people don't have someone to tell them, this is a tool and this is something that you can really use to change your life, rather than this is something that you can just post like it's your diary. I know you do a lot of work with young people. How has, the way that you've guided them changed since, you started using media?
Yeah. So digital media and social media, particularly, is a great asset when you're trying to do brand building. And I think of, student athletes, I think it was mentioned a bit earlier, in that they're able to use that, to post their highlights and to sell their personalities. But it's also a detractor, because as an HR person, one of the things that I do as soon as I get a resume is I Google the name to see, what is up there? What is that social media footprint of that person that's applying for a position? And so college recruiters, admission recruiters do the same thing. When you're interested in someone, you want to see what is out there. And so our young people have to understand that this is a tool for you all to use to begin to sell yourself. And so that your recruiters, your professors, the admission counselors can get to know you, prior to them bringing you on or offering you a scholarship or even just admission into school. And so we get it, right? Like, social media has become the journal of the 2000s, if you will. And so every thought you want to share. I think one of the things that we try to impose on our kids or get them to really understand is that, everyone isn't entitled to all of your deepest, most inner thoughts. And so how do we figure out how to allow them to be their most expressive selves, but also understand these things don't go away. Even when you delete a tweet, it's still there. Even when you delete a snap, it's still there. And so just understanding how to use social media as a tool to help them, get ahead.
you. Thank you. Another thing I wanted to ask, just to touch on your work with HR, looking into people's backgrounds, what are some tools in our social media that can help us with the job? What is something that we can put on our social media to kind of push our resume up?
So it's interesting. I was just having this conversation today, and this isn't necessarily in regards to social media or even digital media. But when you're applying for a job, please, please, please submit a cover letter. It's better to have one and not need it than need one and not have it. And I can't tell you the number of resumes that I get, and it's in the hundreds, that don't have a cover letter. And for me, what it does, a cover letter tells me who you are, right? It connects you to this position. It's your opportunity to tell me why you are interested in this position. It tells me, what skill sets you have that makes you an ideal candidate for this position. And it's in your words. It doesn't leave it up to me to figure out why you might be a good fit. And more importantly, I don't have to put the puzzle pieces together when going through your resume to say, oh, this is a good skill set and this is a good fit. It allows you to lead that conversation. And if I get 100 resumes with one cover letter, that one cover letter is going to be the one that garners my attention the most. The other thing is using social media to sell yourself and identifying what are your skill sets, right? I know a lot of us use shorthand. We're in a texting environment or environment now, but I want to know that you can complete a thought, right? And you know how to spell and you're grammatically correct. And so just thinking about when you're expressing yourself on a Twitter or you're putting a caption on Instagram, instead of using shorthand, use that as an opportunity to express yourself as a representation of yourself.
I love what you said about cover letters. I actually saw that said the cover letter is your chance to show the company. If you don't make a single piece to your resume, you can write that cover letter. I thought that was great. Cover letters can do what they do. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
volume. I think it's beautiful that.
Hello, thanks for joining us. I want to introduce one of my best new friends. She has connected with one of my past students in the African American military timeline, Buffalo Soldier. And she and Mr. Powell, my business partner, connected about 30 days ago in Dallas. And all I can do is hand the mic over to her. She's the story that I've never heard before. About the research about it, Buffalo Soldier, Mexican American excellence. So okay, check scene, 1, 2, testing, 1, 2, testing. Testing, 1, 2. I know. Oh my God. Okay, so when did it start again? Okay. Okay, thank you for rejoining us. I'm Kevin Clark from Dakar Foundation. This segment here is a conversation between Donna and Dana. But Donna is one of my best, newest friends. She and I connected on something I'm very passionate about, the Buffalo Soldiers and the African American military timeline. One of my business partners went out to Nogales to preside over a 3-day ceremony where he came back and he told me that this was something that we need to follow because it's a budding story. And then Donna's told me a little bit about the intersectionality of African Americans and Mexicans that I don't think a lot of people know about. So I think you'll enjoy a conversation with Dana and Donna about ethnic studies and the timeline that all of us need to know a little bit more about.
Hold it anywhere like this? Okay, just like this? Oh, thank you, thank you. Now, when you say live, it's not live, is it? Okay. Help me out. That's right.
Okay. Hello. Yes.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Thank you for being with us. I'm very excited for this conversation. And thank you, Anna Marie, for being here with us. First, I would just like to talk about what you do, Donna, with your work on studies and how to intermingle American studies and everything.
Well, first I want to say happy last day of Black History Month.
Yes.
I'm trying to dress appropriately here, represent, but truly, how much time do I have? It's an amazing story, many facets of it. I can give you a background and we can go into detail, but approximately how much time do I have? Seriously. Okay, okay, we're gonna bring this along then. Okay, I am Donna Jackson Houston. I am the founder and the president of the Nogales Buffalo Soldiers Legacy Association. And what happened is just last year, I realized and I learned that my grandfather was a Buffalo Soldier in the 25th Infantry. And he served at Camp Little in Nogales, Arizona. Now, my family and I always knew that he served in the military, but we did not know he was a Buffalo Soldier. And part of the miseducation and not knowing was that he was 25th Infantry. And somehow my family believed that it was cavalry, was Buffalo Soldier. When you look at the media, they're always on horseback. But there is definitely the story of the on-foot infantry, and that was my grandfather who served over 100 years ago. So when I learned that my grandfather was this Buffalo Soldier, I said that we have to do something to acknowledge not only him, but all the other Buffalo Soldiers who served in Nogales, Arizona at Camp Little and this just in general, all the black military. Let's start giving them their long overdue. So that's kind of where it started.
Beautiful. Thank you. And I think that ties in so much with what we've been talking about today, which is teaching leadership. How can we make sure that the things that are being taught are true and relevant and are, fully detailed, have all the details? I'd love to get your opinion on that, and then also Anna Marie's opinion on that. When it comes to teaching, how can we make sure that we're teaching something that will advance storytelling and advance the way that we tell stories? Because at the end of the day, that's how we teach. That is teaching, is essentially, it's storytelling. It's making sure that the story is consistent with everyone.
I was just talking about someone outside, and they're talking about the narrative. Well, we need to enhance the narrative. And this whole history of the Buffalo Soldiers, Black history, I say Black history is American history. Okay, so everyone needs to be involved with this and understand. So,
thank you. Anna Marie, I'd love to get your input on that, just how we can ensure that when we're teaching, that the narrative is consistent and that the narrative has people.
I'm sorry, say that again, that the narrative is what? Repeat that one more time. Can you hear me?
Consistent, and that the narrative is true to what actually happened.
Yeah, and I think the most interesting thing that was just said right now is that we're celebrating Black History Month. This is the last day of it, I believe. And that Black history is American history. The country was built on the backs of African Americans and people from the West Indies that were brought here. And the stories need to be told, but somehow, how do we bridge that gap of what's Black history and what's all of our history? And people, it's important. I believe it's still important now to highlight things like that because everything's been so hidden for so long. But with the hard work is starting to integrate it. So I'm going to put a link in the chat window here to a project that I've been working on. Oh, the buzz just left for a minute. Sorry, that's why I make you repeat. Anyway, there's I'm now able to talk about it because everything was being developed, but there's a documentary being made on the African company that was a theater company in Lower Manhattan in the early to mid 1800s, and they performed all Shakespeare. It was a Black company, and the people that I tell that to were like, really? They were doing Shakespeare? Yes, they were doing it. They were doing it well. And the story of how much they were chased and had to move from theater to theater until finally, at one point, when they were putting on a production of Richard III, another company, a white company, was doing that as well. And lo and behold, the Black theater company got burned down. And they were doing better with their ticket sales. And every time I asked people if they know why, and they said because they were better, they were good, I said, well, that may have been part of the equation, but another reason is that they didn't cut anybody out. So Black theater goers weren't allowed in the white theater, but the Black performers and company left it open to all. So Morgan Friedman and Laurie McCrary just signed on as executive producers, so I'm free to put the link in there. There's a website, there's clips. They probably won't actually shoot anything until January, but I'm very excited because this is history. This is Black history. This is our history, with all its pitfalls and good things and bad things. So I'm hoping for a lot. I consulted with them and convinced them to do the production in 360 degrees because Shakespeare, the Shakespeare Theater. So there's all sorts of creative things they could do and a lot of creative people attached to it, including, I'm blanking on her name right now because I don't know her that well, but the soundtrack composer is an African-American woman. So that's, I guess, what I would add to some of this, the discussion on mentorship as well. I got in a little late, so I don't know if somebody else already mentioned this. Like David Cohn already mentioned, learn by doing, study with the masters, and that's been my mantra, and the mantra from the American Film Institute, which I still carry forward. But the other thing was to learn how to learn and use your mentors to teach you how to learn how to learn, because as soon as you learn something, there's going to be a new way, a new application, another upgrade, a different device, something is going to happen. 5 different types of password authentication. You've got to learn to be nimble and to jump from that and take the quality, the through thread of any application, service, and content as well, and find out how to steer yourself, to your true north.
There's so much that's going on. First of all, ma'am, it's really great to have you coming in from Nogales, and because your grandfather brought to you and brought to us a significant storyline that I think is missing from the American story, and most African Americans don't have it. It goes beyond the 9th and 10th Cavalries and the 24th and 20th Infantry regiments, because they all start at the same time. But the term Buffalo Soldier has come to have its own meaning, and of course, the few television shows that do show it, they always put them on all of the regiments on horseback. But there are folks out there who were walking, and in fact, Henry Flipper's work that's noted for his engineering brilliance was with an infantry unit, because they were the ones that manned the outpost that went into those places, quote unquote, where horses don't and can't go. And so it becomes important to understand that. And then the part I really call is if people understand how the West was really won. And all the folks out in California, if you really look at Watts, you realize that basically it was settled by mostly the young soldiers that were taking advantage of the post-war bonds and the educational opportunities that pushed us forward. And here is where the piece that really gets lost. As African Americans moved west, they found a different kind of freedom, because they were fighting more often than not as symbols of this new nation, more than just their color. That changed the mindset. And so what happened is you saw a different level of boldness that took place in those who moved west. So that's a whole nother story. And I won't go down that route, but it's important to kind of understand that, because the core of what Dakar is about is opportunities and moving forward. And the top of what Dakar is supposed to be about is character development. And that begins with, first of all, knowing that you belong in the room, knowing that you are part of the tapestry of this nation, not additive, but part of. And so the whole cloth of the African Americans included in that flag that sits behind me, so that you never see yourself as separate. But unfortunately, there are people who want you to think that way. And that movie that you saw earlier, Love and Liberty, was to show you that we're intertwined. And the most beautiful thing about that video, to every American, they should pull away from there, is John Adams in his capture. The first thing he says is, the first person to die for that flag and this nation and this Constitution was Crispus Attucks. It's not accident. And by the way, he even said it himself, I will not be a slave to any man or nation again. That's no doubt. So when you listen and watch what happened to those African Americans that stood up after the end of the end of a civil war, starting these new regiments, they were truly fighting for a foothold of recognition of who we are. So my hat's off to your ancestors, your direct ancestors, because the reality is, without what they did, there was no General Gordon Bray. And without Colin Powell, there is no Barack Obama. It has been that legacy of commitment that has made us grow to who we are. And by the way, our best days are ahead, not behind us. That's important. That's why I love to have you and Shoni in conversations, because I want to make sure every time we dig, we're digging for places for you to put your feet in both how history is told, captured, and it reflects what you're thinking. So I'm going to pause, and I apologize, but this is this moves me. And Miss Persimmony, I appreciate your contribution. I appreciate what you're doing.
Thank you.
Because
Same.
because without that commitment, without the full shades of American participation, it then looks like a us versus them. And
Right.
you know, the person that said it best was probably Paul Bear Bryant from the University of Alabama football. When he said, when Sam Cunningham from the University of Southern California came to Alabama, a black running back, and ran up and down the University of Alabama, and oh, by the way, he was from Alabama, he did more to change the perception of people's minds, because he was getting a USC education from a high school in Alabama with the talent that was superior to anything he had on that team. And that's where America starts to see itself, when you get challenged. So thank you.
I'd like to add something that, I think is a real issue to address.
Thank you
sorry.
for joining us.
He popped.
It's a pause, Miss Persimmon, so you got to know that. That's why she's talking.
Okay. Oh, I couldn't tell that was there. I'm just looking at this one screen. It's so funny. I was going to look. So the live feed is paused right now?
No, it's a pause between the time that we talk and the time that they get the last bit of information. And so she was starting to talk because she saw my mouth had stopped.
So should I go on with what I was just going to say? I'm not sure where we...
Take a second and she'll raise her hand. Watch this.
Got it. Okay. All right.
It's yours.
Okay. So what I wanted to do was talk about an issue that I think does need to be addressed, because there's myself supportive for a long, long time, the community. Obviously I'm not a person of color, but how we educate the people who aren't as how to best be supportive. There's a lot of kind of dumb innocence and ignorance, far and out of dumb innocence. And a story that I like to let my students know about is when I first met Spike Lee. I was running Image Film and Video Center in Atlanta, Georgia. And George Stoney, who was head of the NYU film department then, wonderful documentary filmmaker, called me all excited and said, I've got to introduce you to Spike Lee. He's coming to Atlanta, and what can we do to show his film? And this is the days of She's Gotta Have It. And I was I'll make sure he gets to talk to people, gets seen. And what did I do? I called up the Black Filmmakers Alliance. I put him in touch with people at Howard University and other places. But later, and I think it was with Spike himself, I realized, I'd met him again briefly in Brooklyn, that my inclination to put him in touch with the Black groups and the Black filmmakers, when he should have been highlighted everywhere. University of Georgia, at Image. He came in, met our board members, but I just sent him to, there's the Black area. And, I thought about that over and over again, that sort of self-censorship and bias in a way to do that. We don't always realize. We think you're being helpful, but you don't. Everyone needs to realize that we're all part of the same group, and that it doesn't have to be this extra area. So, did we lose the general? Oh, he's coming back. So I just wanted to give that because I think it's illustrative of somebody who means well. She means well.
Association, we did create a museum exhibit of the Buffalo Soldiers, primarily
Oh, great.
and Buffalo Soldiers who made Nogales their home after their service. However, we're taking this exhibit on the road, and it's just been a wonderful response. I already have 4 other museums who have reached out to me in Arizona and California. So it's going to come to Pomona for Juneteenth at the African American Museum of New Beginnings in Pomona. And we're working with the curator for the and Mayor Tim Sandoval, one of his city commissioners. So we're very excited. But whenever we take the exhibit, we're reaching out to the descendants and to the Buffalo Soldier organizations locally. We would like to bring them into the exhibit, make it relevant to that location. So the outreach is, if you are a Buffalo Soldier descendant, please contact me via, one way is the website. It is Nogales Buffalo Soldiers .org, and my email is Nogales Buffalo Soldiers @gmail.org. And we are making our rounds, hopefully nationally. Again, there's been a great response, and I would like to include as many descendants and tell us their story and include their family Buffalo Soldiers. So I just wanted to add that to you.
Yes, thank you. And with that, I unfortunately have to close us out. We are out of time. I just want to thank everyone for joining us and for excellent conversation. I feel like this has been such a great learning opportunity for me and for young people everywhere that are watching. So thank you.
Thank you.